Well, he is a legend in the U.S. auto industry, holding top positions at GM, Chrysler, and Ford. But Bob Lutz's career included 2 stints at General Motors. First, when the automaker was flying high, and later he helped dig GM out of the biggest crisis in the company's history. He has written this book. I love the title, Bob Lutz, Car Guys versus the Bean Counters. Thank you for being here.
It's good to be here, Poppy. Thanks for having me.
You call it the battle for the soul of American business.
Yeah, and the reason I do that is because I think to a very large extent all of American business, but especially the automobile business, got overly infatuated with financial planning, financial techniques, profit projections, get the target profit number on the board. We want to have the stock price of X by 5 years from now. And then they arranged all the business around those financial objectives. And basically that's what the business schools taught. But I think it's got to be the other way around. Profitability is a reward for serving the consumer better than the other person does. And somehow in all of this academic financial stuff, that got lost.
You say, the MBAs just screw people up. Look at people like Steve Jobs and Richard Branson as true entrepreneurs who focus solely on design and the product and got it right.
Design and customer excellence. And if you look at it, both of them have a very clear vision. Steve Jobs wants to get absolute excellence and customer delight in things like iPod, iPad, iPad 2, and so forth. And Richard Branson, of course, started with Virgin Atlantic, low fares, low frills. I mean, both of these guys are passionate about some sort of doing something better than anybody else is doing. Now, do they have finance people who check and create budgets and says, whoa, not so fast, we don't have any more money right now? Of course they do, but the question is, who is the driving force in the company?
Do you think that GM is on that road? I mean, you came back to GM after a 30-year absence in 2001. You thought it's going to take 3 years to turn this company around. You left after 9 more years. Is it on that road?
Yes, it is, and the reason it was relatively easy to do, and I had to put a lot of cost back in the cars, which was not popular with the finance people, because I said, let me put money into the cars, and down the road when the cars come out, I'm sure they'll do better. Well, that's sort of I think, you think, but we finally got it done with the support of Rick Wagoner, the CEO. Because it was obvious that General Motors was on a continual downhill slope and they were willing to try something new.
You bring up Rick Wagoner, and he was shown the door by the White House, ostensibly. Do you think that he deserved to go? Or do you give him credit like others do that say, look, he had a big role in turning around GM with the labor contract negotiations in 2007, that he wasn't as much at fault?
He wasn't at fault. It definitely was not at fault. And he was right when he said that GM could not survive a long bankruptcy. And besides, there was no debtor in possession financing available at that point. The government was the only entity that had any money to do a bailout. So people kind of forget that now. No, but I think overall Rick was a good CEO. He did a lot of brilliant things, but it's obvious that when the government has to step in and bail out a company with an equity infusion, they can't leave. They can't leave the management in place.
But under Rick Wagoner, wasn't there also this culture that you illustrated in this book? You said, look, I would sit in these meetings playing on my BlackBerry brick breaker, and you said not a lot got said. I really did read it. Not a lot got said at these meetings.
Well, that was the downside. That was because Rick was himself a product of the GM system. He had grown up in the system, and a lot of things that an outsider comes in, with fresh eyes and says, this is crazy. Why are we spending all this time on this trivial stuff? To him, it seemed normal. And I sometimes talked to him about it and said, Rick, geez, look, I mean, we are wasting so much time. And he says, well, it may seem unimportant to you, Bob, but this is a very, very large company, and large companies have procedures, et cetera, et cetera. So, I wasn't CEO, but I did very frequently bring it to his attention. And I think this is where if you grow up in the system, you can't imagine anything else.
What about the unions?
Well, they are, of course, partly to blame because they kept driving for more and more and more, which is what unions do. So it's not that they were evil, they just did what unions do. And for want of an alternative, we gave it to them, and we finally wound up with a union contract, especially as far as health care and retiree health care is concerned, that was simply a burden that no private company can deal with.
You say right now the United States has a historic window.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, the point is, I think a lot of American industries have gotten restructured, have shed a lot of excess capacity, have new union contracts, have an intensely focused management, and as I mentioned, the exchange rate, so that versus international competition, we are in great shape, and the Japanese are all having profitability problems.
So this is our time.
This is our time, and that's why I make the point in the book, we can become a nation of producers and exporters again, and we don't have to be a nation of bomb traders and importers. Importing and trading does not create value.